a right angle. To find area, we use area equals half base times height. If there is not a right angle, it's a bit harder. However, we can use two different formulas. And usually I use this one. The other one's a little bit more complicated, but that's all right. Area equals half AB sine, and that's a capital C. So lowercase a, lowercase b, sine capital C. And so we need to know what those letters mean in a second. Or Heron's rule, which is, now this is going to be a bit complicated, but I'm just going to write it once here and then we'll actually spend some time on it later. Now, I never use Heron's rule unless I specifically get told to use Heron's rule, and then I look it up on the formula sheet and I make sense of it, okay? So Heron's rule, which is area equals the square root of S bracket S take A bracket S take B bracket S take C, where S equals half of A plus B plus C. Little bit of a confusing rule. The first one's way easier. The first one I would almost always use, unless I specifically said use Heron's rule. However, end of semester exam last year, use Heron's rule. And I went, what? And I went, I can't even remember it. But I found it on the formula sheet and it's all good. So that exactly, both those formulas exactly is how they're written on the formula sheet. Okay, so as long as we know how to use them, we should be fine. All right, so we've been given these formulas. We're mainly going to focus in on the one on the left to start with. What do we need to know to be able to use these formulas? We need to know what A, B, and C are, yeah? So we don't have opposite and adjacent and hypotenuse anymore. There is no hypotenuse in a non-right angled triangle. Okay, and in fact you can have a triangle with all different lengths. So you can have a triangle. Now if I look at something like this, if I draw something more like this, okay, there's no right angle on it. Hang on, let's try that again. You know I'm not that great at drawing. Okay, so if you look at this and I tell you the different sides, you should be able to tell me which angle is the biggest if I tell you the sides, or which angle is the smallest, shouldn't I? So if I told you this was 12 and this was 15 and this was 3, which side's going to be the biggest side? The one between the 3 and the 12, because it's opposite the bigger side, yeah? Which side's going to have the smallest angle? Between the opposite to the 3 or between the 12 and the 15? So I want you guys to get in that habit as we go. However, we need to know about labelling triangles. So we'll make it a bit of an easier one. So labelling triangles. Non-right angled triangles. I'm just going to write NRAT. Is that okay with everybody? Non-right angled. Actually, I'll write NRAT, RA triangles. Non-right angled triangles. We have a different way of doing this. So angles are labelled with a capital letter. What do you reckon sides might be labelled with? lowercase letter. Now, the one thing we need to be aware of though is, you know how you sort of can see that the angles opposite a side are kind of related to each other because of the size of them? Okay, so they're kind of corresponding to each other. So the angles opposite to the sides, they're actually labelled with the same letter, one being lowercase, one being uppercase. Okay, so sides, and I'll draw it and it'll make more sense, okay? So the angles are labelled with a capital letter. Sides, or the opposite sides, are labelled with the corresponding lowercase letter. Now, no one side has to be a specific letter as we go, except for with the angles. And so when we look at different rules, I'll teach you how to label them in ways to make the rules easier. So it's not like where we always know that one side is the hypotenuse, okay? It could be that we want to label that angle as A, and so we can label that angle as A as long as we label the corresponding side as A as well, and so on, okay? So we can relabel any triangle however we wish, as long as the angles are capital letters, the sides are lowercase letters, and the opposite sides and angles are the same. So, for example, if I label this side here as C and this side here as, this angle here as B and this angle here as A, what does this side here have to be? Lowercase b, because it is opposite to the uppercase B. Okay, what about, so this is where it's always the opposite sides which seem to have, you know, the most sort of connection to each other, because again, about that hands and the different angles and things. All right, so this side, which I'm highlighting now in blue, what label would that have on it? Lowercase a. Because it's opposite to the capital A. So therefore, the last one has to be lowercase c, which is a little bit harder to see because lowercase c looks a lot like a big capital C as well, all right? But you get used to it. Is everyone okay with that sort of labelling? You're going to just need to get used to it. And that's why the first question you ask is there a right angle? If there's a right angle, then you're labelling the hypotenuse, the opposite, the adjacent. You're finding the base and the height, which are your opposite and adjacent, to find the area and things like that. As soon as you say, no, it's not a right angle triangle, you need to go, okay, I'm going to be using uppercase letters for the angles and lowercase letters for the sides. That's why that question is so important to ask at the start. Okay, now this question, you guys could have looked at it and gone, yeah, there's a right angle because that triangle looks a bit like a right angle triangle. However, unless you know it, unless it actually, you can prove it in some way, you assume that it's not a right angle triangle. You don't make an assumption from a drawing that it's right angled unless it tells you angles which look like right angles are right angles, which sometimes questions do say that, okay? Or you know because Pythagoras works. So if you got a 3, 4 and 5, if I, instead of B, C and A, I put in 3, 4 and 5, you would have gone, it has to be a right angle because Pythagoras works with it and Pythagoras only works with right angled triangles, okay? Do we need to practice labelling or do you think you guys are okay with that? All right, so let's have a look at using our area formula. So to use the area formula, we need to know two sides and the angle in between. We must label the angle as C, okay, for this formula to work. If you think about it, area equals half AB sine C. That's our rule. That's in your formula sheet. Half AB sine C. no matter how you look at it with a triangle, if we go A and B, so let's look at this picture here, A and B, where's the angle going to be? C. Where's the capital C going to be? If we've got lowercase a and lowercase b as the two sides, where's the angle always going to be of C? It's going to be in between them. Always. Why is that? Because you've only got three sides on a triangle. A and B are here. The other side's going to be the one here. The angle opposite it's always going to be in between them. Okay, so that's why we always have to have the two sides and the angle in between. So the first step is make sure that you label the angle as C. Okay, so if we look at some steps for this, they're pretty easy steps. Step one is still, is it right angled? We just want to get in that habit and we want it to be a no. Second step is label, making sure the angle between the two known sides is labelled as C. Step three is sub in and solve. Now, sometimes, and we'll do a couple of questions like it, we'll sub in, solve. We'll actually give you the area and you need to find the sides or you need to find the angles as well. So it's still exactly the same. It's just that we'd need to solve for one of the other sides. Now, I don't want you to write this, but I just want you to show you why this works, okay? If we look at a triangle, actually we'll do one first. You do need to write this down. If I have this triangle, all right, why can't we use half base times height for this question? Because it's not right angle, but why else? We don't have the height. We need to be able to find the height. Now, if I was looking at this and I put a right angle triangle in here, if I looked at this and put a right angle triangle in there, how could I find the height? Yeah? Good. If I actually look at this, but what else do I need to know? So I'm going to use, I've got 40. If I'm trying to find X and I've got 8, is that what you're meaning? Yeah? So I've got a triangle I can find that distance on, can't I? How would I work it out? Opposite hypotenuse. So I'm going to go soka toa. I'm going to pick no, you don't need to write this bit down. If you don't want to, you can. If you want to, it doesn't matter. Sine 40 equals X. Can you guys stop talking, please? Some people actually want to know why this rule works. Equals X over 8. Everyone see it there? And so then I can go 8 over sine 40 equals X, and I could find out what X was. So that would give me the height of the triangle. Okay, to then find the area, I would have to say half the height times the base, which is the 12. So I've got this there is our height. So to find half of the base times by the height, it would give me the area. Can everybody see that? All right, now if I put the 12 and the 8 back into the letters we're using, it's actually half of A times B times sine C. So if I label this angle as C and I label this side as A and this side as B, that's why this rule works. It's actually using SOHCAHTOA to find the height of the triangle, and then it times it by the base, and then we get our answer. Now, you don't need to know why it works. However, I just want to show people so that they know if that there's a reasoning behind it. It's not just a random formula which works. That's why it works. Okay, so we use SOHCAHTOA to find the height and so on. What you need to know is that is the formula for it. Okay, so we need to label using the angle as C. So I've got 40 degrees as C. A and B, it doesn't matter if you use A and B as either side, as long as you label them. Okay, so they're interchangeable right now. And so then I can put in my numbers. So I would like you to write from here, please. Half of 12 times 8 times sine 40. And we need to put that into our calculators and get an answer. Someone got an answer? Say again? 30.85. Now what measurement would be here for this? Square centimetres, because it's area. Okay. Oh, that's wrong. All right, I'm just writing this so that we can see it for future reference. And that's all you've got to be able to do. So the main mistake people make is labelling the angle in the wrong spot, or just using them. Actually, the main mistake people use is just using the wrong rule and not asking that first question of, is there a right angle? And then just using half base times height when there's no actual right angle there to get your height. Okay, so be aware of checking that. Okay, if there's no right angle there, then you need to use this rule. Everyone okay with that? All right, so let's try and go do one of the backwards questions. Okay, so let's try this one, e.g. All right, so this says, can you write down, please? This is the more common question you get given. If the area of this triangle is 50 square centimetres, determine the value of x. The main thing people get wrong with this is that they either go, I can't answer it, or they label things wrong. So what do we need to make sure we label? We need to label C, okay? Now, we've got two angles there. We could actually find another angle as well if we wanted to. We should know what that bottom angle is. And often in these questions, we don't give you the angle you need to actually find. You need to be able to work it out. So what would the bottom angle here be? I've got two answers yelled out. So what do the two numbers together add up to? 123, 57. So we should be able to know that, but that's not the angle we're going to need. But you should be able to work it out anyway, so even if the angle is missing. Which angle do we label as C? 72, because it's between the two sides we need, including the one we're trying to find. So that's the important bit. Now, again, it doesn't really matter which one's A or B. I just usually just go left to right. So I've checked if there's a right angle. There isn't. That means I have to use area rule, which means I have to label with letters, capital letters and lowercase letters, and I have to label the angle in between the two sides as C. So we've done that so far. So then we write out our formula. And this time I put in the 50. 50 equals half of A, which is X. So X times B, which is 13, times sine 72. Now you can put into your calculator solve an X for there. Yep. 50 came from the question. The area of this triangle is 50 square centimetres. Determine the value of X. So it's doing this sort of, it's using the equation to be able to find a length. Yes. Yes. All right. So Declan, does that answer your question? Yeah. So we can either put solve, put that in and press X, or we can sort of rearrange as we go. However, it's probably easier at this point just to put in solve. But you can actually, so I would, if I was going to do the working out, I'd be saying X times 6.5 sine 72. It's half of 13 sine 72. And then I'd be moving that. So you'd still have to put on your calculator that to get to X, or you could just solve. It's up to you. What's our answer end up being? I did make up this number, so it might be a bit of an odd number. Pardon? 6.5 because half of 13. See, I've got half here and the 13. And because it's all being multiplied, we can rearrange. Just trying to get X by itself. Someone got an answer? Someone who used solve to start with? 8.09. Anyone else got the same answer? Could you guys check? Could someone else try and just put in the 50 over 6.5 sine 72 and see if we get the same answer? 0.8? Okay, around there. That's fine. And that's our answer. You can just put in solve. So here, put in solve for X. That's the easiest way. But you must show that line of working out. You must show the equation with the numbers in it. Any questions? All right. What I might do is we might do Heron's rule next lesson, and we might just practice this for this lesson. So, have you got a book on you, Georgia? Could you guys start doing some questions in your book? I'll just tell you what they. Oh, sorry. Just tell you what they are. So 10A you don't need to do. It's just normal area questions. Sorry, 11A I think we're at. It is still book 2. All right, exercise 11B. All right, I'm going to say, can everyone listen up because otherwise you're going to do it wrong. Listen up. Questions 1 to 17, every second question. So that means question 1, then leave question 2. Then do question 3, then leave question 4. Then leave question leave question 4, do question 5, and so on. So you should be doing 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, and 17. Okay? In the new book, it is page 198, 199. I'm not sure in the old book. Don't do too many questions. Don't do too little questions. Thank you, Georgia.